Welcome to my channel. Thanks for dropping by. This is a lesson about lead guitar and it's aimed at beginners and intermediate players. So before we play, I'm going to go through a checklist of a number of things that you really ought to have a look at to get the best out of your playing and the best out of your guitar. First and foremost, and most important, your pick or plectrum is going to affect the way you sound, in the sense that the attack or the click of the note is going to be softer or harder depending on how hard you hit the strings, but depending on the kind of pick you use. I use a very small hard pick. It's a Dunlop Tortex. It's an H3 thickness. That's, I think, almost the thickest one, or the stiffest one. There are lots of kinds of picks. There are flexible, bendy picks. There are picks that are smooth. There are picks that have a grip, a rough surface that you can grip, that helps to stop it flying out of your hand. So they come in all shapes and sizes, various different kinds of plastic. I suggest you buy a selection, try them, maybe do a different pick every day, see which one sits in your hand better between your thumb and first finger, see which one sounds better. Notice how they sound different, but try and settle on one type to begin with and persevere with that. If you don't get on with it, then change to another one, but try as many as you can and notice how they feel and how they sound. Secondly, and almost as important, are your strings. I recommend you buy these. I'm not getting paid to sponsor this or endorse it, but Elixir strings cost twice as much as most other normal strings, but they have a special coating that makes them last at least 3 or 4 times longer. They'll sound like new, they'll stay bright for months, provided you don't do 4 or 5 gigs a week and sweat a lot. But for normal home use, they'll last for ages and they sound great, they stay in tune. I recommend 009 to 042. That's a kind of lightish medium gauge. They're fairly easy to bend. If you can manage one number thicker, so a 010 to a 046, they'll stay in tune better, but they're going to be harder to bend. Bending being this pulling the string upwards to raise the note. That's going to be harder with 010 strings, but they have a bit more tone and they stay in tune better. Okay, and speaking of tuning, one of the most important pieces of your equipment that you should have with you at all times is a tuner of some kind. I would recommend one of these little clip-on tuners for the simple reason that your guitar can be muted in a live situation, so you're not having this horrible twang-twang sound of someone tuning up. It relies on the vibrations from the body and the neck of the guitar. It's visible in poor lighting conditions, which at a gig is generally the case. Even if the stage or wherever you're playing is in darkness, you can see this really well. It's very, very accurate. Okay, I've just tuned the guitar so you can see that my E string is in tune. My B string also. My G string. My D. My A. And my bottom E. Okay, so we're all good to go there. You don't have to worry about it in a live situation. It will turn itself off after a couple of minutes. but we can turn it off there. So get a tuner, get a clip-on tuner, they're the best, I think, the most practical. And as far as tuning goes, of course you should tune up before you play. You should always have your guitar in tune at all times. You need to train your ear to how your guitar sounds when it's really in tune, so that you can tell when it's not in tune. It's very good ear training. So tune before you start playing. When you've been playing, practicing about 10 minutes, tune again. And it's always a good idea, when you found that the string is in tune according to your tuner, give it a little pull upwards away from the body, just a couple of little tugs, gentle tugs, and that'll help any resistance here at the nut. It kind of gets stuck here sometimes, especially if the nut's new. That'll make sure that the tension is even behind and in front of the nut. That might mean that your string goes down a little when you tug it. Simply tune it up again, and then it should stay in tune at least for the next 10 minutes or so. But if your guitar's set up right, it should stay in tune for the next hour or two. Good. One thing is that your guitar needs to be in tune with itself. That sounds strange maybe, but that's what we call intonation. And your open string is repeated, or at least the note is repeated 1 octave higher at the 12th fret. And if you simply touch the string over the 12th fret, not behind it, but right over it, you get a harmonic. The harmonic will always reflect accurately an octave above the open string, but you want that to be the case when you fret the note on the 12th fret, so you can compare, harmonic, fretted note. That sounds pretty good to me. But the way to check, of course, is to get your tuner, check that your harmonic is in tune. That's good. Okay, my 12th fret note is a tiny bit sharp. On this tuner, if there's a red bar, okay, the first red bar after the green in the middle, you're not going to hear that. That's unfortunately something with guitars, they're not going to be absolutely exactly correct in terms of intonation, but you've got to get it as close as you can. If you notice, if you can hear that it's way out, you really need to adjust it. If you notice on the tuner that it's more than slightly way out, then you need to adjust it. The way you do this is at the bridge. You can adjust the bridge saddles. Those are the parts of the bridge where the string passes over from where it's anchored. You can adjust these bridge saddles lengthways, which effectively shortens or lengthens the string, and this will lower or raise the note at the 12th fret. So tune your string first. Fret your note at the 12th fret. Okay, if we decide we want to adjust that, we get a screwdriver, a crosshead screwdriver. We adjust the bridge saddle so that the string, so that this note is raised or lowered, and then retune your string because it will have changed from concert, and check it again. You can go through all the strings at the 12th fret and check them the same way. If you can get it as close as you can, then everywhere else on the guitar is going to sound pretty much in tune. Okay, that's something you need a little experience with, but it's something you can do that isn't going to drastically affect the playing of your guitar. Okay, optional adjustments. One that's actually quite important, but you probably won't need to do it, is the pickup height. That's the distance between the string and the pickup. That's measured when you fret the highest note possible, and you measure between the bottom of the string and the top of the pickup. And on Fender guitars, that's generally about 2 millimeters. That's a real rough estimate or rough average. You need to check the specs. You can Google your guitar and get the exact number of millimeters you need. It's quite handy. If you don't have a micrometer, you can buy one of these simple calibration rules which have a kind of bar chart running along the bottom, running along the edge. It's in metric and in inches. You simply hold this, or rather here, you simply hold this against the string, and you can look and see how high your string is away from the pickup, or how high the string is off the fretboard. Okay, so that's a handy £2 piece of equipment. Changing strings, learn how to change strings properly. It's good if you get one of these. It looks like a plastic toy, but it will help you wind the strings much more quickly and also much more evenly. What we want is, when we put the new string on, we thread it through the hole here, over the bridge, up over the nut, and then into whichever tuning peg it belongs to. But then, holding the string between your thumb and your first finger, take about a hand's width of slack, and then wrap the string around the tuning peg shaft and push it through the hole again and pull that tight. And then while you're winding the string, keep it tense with your hand and gradually let the slack out as you're winding. And then you should have around about 2 to 3, maybe even 4 even winds around the shaft of the tuning peg, and it should be winding gradually down from the hole so that the string actually ends up being angled downwards from the nut. So you've got a change in angle here, definitely. Some guitars, Fender guitars, have these what are called string trees, and that helps to hold the thinner strings downwards to create this angle between the string behind the nut and the string in front of the nut. Okay, so yeah, putting strings on properly will be absolutely crucial as to in relation to how good the guitar stays in tune. That's something that you'll learn by doing, you'll learn by experience. Okay, there's one other adjustment that I don't recommend you have anything to do with. That's something that a luthier, a guitar tech, an expert in a guitar shop needs to do. It's not really something you can do yourself, especially if you're a beginner or a newcomer to guitars. And that's the angle of the neck, or the neck relief, whether it bends down away from the strings, or let's say just downwards, and if it bends slightly upwards. So it can be flat, that's ideal. It can be slightly convex, and it can be slightly concave, but we don't want it to be too concave. It ought to be more or less flat. A slight concave is okay. Convex will probably give you problems with strings buzzing. If your guitar plays okay and you're not getting any buzzes or dead notes anywhere on the fretboard, then fine. leave it. But if you find that you're getting a lot of buzzing and dead notes, in spite of what you do to raise the action, then take it to a guitar tech and ask him or her if the truss rod needs adjusting, and they can do that. It's a pretty quick job, but it's an expert job. As I say, not something you should attempt yourself. Good. So we've got our guitar maybe with new strings on it. It's tuned up. We've set up the intonation so that the guitar is in tune with itself. We're good to go. So next I'm going to show you some of the techniques you're going to need to play lead guitar. So stay tuned. So I'm going to take you through the techniques that you're going to need to play lead guitar. This is going to be a whistle-stop tour. We're not going to have time to look at any of the techniques very closely this time round, but it's important you're familiar with the vocabulary I'm using, or I will be using to describe what I'm doing in solo playing. And it'll help you think about the way you play and where you want to go with your playing and the possibilities. Okay, very simply, when we hit a note, the instinct probably at first, even if you don't know anything about playing lead guitar, is to hit the string downwards. Okay. That's a downstroke, logically. You can also hit the string upwards, which has a slightly different timbre or tone. That's logically called an upstroke. And to begin with, there's nothing wrong in playing just downstrokes, to keep it simple. But there's a limit to how fast you can play that with just downstrokes. And after a certain point it starts to get a bit clumsy and difficult. You reach a kind of speed limit. We can get over that and break the speed limit, if you like, by using what's called alternate picking, which is a downstroke is followed by an upstroke. And you can keep it going down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, groups of any number of notes, but I can navigate those frets much more quickly by alternating my downstroke and upstroke. It's also much easier to jump onto the next string or to the next but one string. And when you're playing fairly long phrases or even scales, that kind of thing, it's good discipline to stick to this alternate picking, to try and play everything with alternate picking, because you'll be able to play a lot faster and a lot more smoothly. It depends. Start off with just downstrokes, that's fine. Actually, we're not going to be looking at anything much here that will require alternate picking, but that's something to bear in mind for when you gain confidence and you get a little bit more fluent in terms of the notes that you have in your vocabulary. Okay, downstrokes, upstrokes and alternate picking. Some notes we're going to let ring, so I'll take a random, an A here. Of course we can let that ring, but sometimes we want a short note, and so we press and then release the pressure fairly quickly. Okay. you might have noticed I'm keeping my hand, at least what we call the heel of my hand, pretty much parallel and just in front of the bridge. On electric guitar you need to keep all the strings under control and eliminate any unwanted noises because they're going to be amplified too. Okay, so the damping technique is going to be very important in your lead playing. I'm damping that G string with my with the heel of my hand just in front of the bridge, but I can easily take it off the string to let it ring. So I've got a combination of a muted note and a ringing note. But if I'd simply hit it open, it's much louder and will last for much longer. But there are going to be passages that you want to play staccato, so you'll keep the heel of your hand in position here. But you'll also be killing the notes by releasing the pressure with your left hand. Okay, so that was damping and staccato. Now, with the ringing notes, they're fine. But they sound a bit dull, and to make them sound sweeter and to trick people's ears that they're actually more in tune, it's the same technique that singers use. If you think of opera singers particularly, they use a lot of vibrato. But with the human voice, you can raise the note above concert pitch and below, so it goes in a kind of wave above and below the concert pitch of the note. On the guitar, with classical guitar, you can do a lengthways vibrato, which will pretty much do the same thing. Which in theory lowers the note as well as raises it, but some people will argue about that. The better way to do it, the more effective way to do it on electric guitar is sideways, or what's called axial vibrato, and we're simply, what are we doing? We're turning a doorknob. Sounds weird, but or winding a clockwork toy up, something like that. But we're revolving our wrist, and in that way making our finger move up and down. Where I'm mostly pushing the note upwards towards me. Some people push the note away from them, which I'm not so good at, but they're both legit. Pushing the notes upwards is probably better on the edge string, on the first string, because if you try and push it downwards, it's gonna go fall off the cliff kind of thing. So this is not really, with fretted notes, simple fretted notes, this is not really a true vibrato, but it sounds like one. It fools the ear to think that it is. Okay, so that's going to make your playing sound sweeter, bluesier, jazzier, rockier than if you simply play straight fretted notes. The next thing we're going to do with notes is change the pitch after we've fretted the note. So let's take this D on the 7th fret, the 3rd string, we can raise that a semitone, we can raise it a whole tone, and we can raise it 1.5 tones. Okay, I'm probably pulling a face when I do that because you need quite a lot of strength. I tend to bend with my 3rd finger, and I have my 2nd finger as kind of backup right behind it. In fact, my first 3 fingers are usually bunched up to add a little bit of strength. Depending on your guitar, the gauge of strings you're using, the way it's set up, the tension is going to vary. On this Telecaster, it's I've got 0-10 strings on, so they're not too bad and they bend accurately. You can't, it's not so easy to overbend. How do you know when you're bending correctly? Well, that's something you're going to have to hear. But there are unison bends that can be a good way to check that your single note bends are pitched correctly. So we've got this, this D here on the 7th fret of the 3rd string. We want to bend it up to E. That sounds okay, but I can check that because I've got an E here on the 2nd string on the 5th fret. And that's an instant riff which you will have heard. In fact, if you combine that with the 5th fret on the 1st string, so you put the A, that's, this is in the key of A, so that's the root note. So that's instant Chuck Berry, and all Chicago blues, Memphis blues, whatever blues you want, that's a classic blues riff. But that's how you can check your bending. You can do unison bends all over the neck, but they're a good, you can play the notes separately or you can play them together. Please excuse the open strings, no extra charge. Good. We can bend up, but we can also bend down. That's a bit trickier because you've got to pre-bend. You've got to bend the note into position first, then hit it, then release the pressure or the pull. Okay, so if I bend this up to where I think it ought to be, okay, so this is a bend up, and this is a bend down. So that's something to practice. We can bend up, but we can also slide up. Technically, or in theory, as many frets as you want, but commonly 2 or 3, 1, 2 or 3, and we can slide down. We can slide up and down. There's all kinds of combinations you can do with that. One of the key techniques, and one that you'll hear very, very often in solo playing, is called a hammer-on. And that means you hit the note. Okay, we're staying on this D note on the 5th fret on the 3rd string. You hit the note, and then, okay, if we're going to hammer on 2 frets higher, we use our 3rd finger and simply bring it down as hard as you can onto the 7th fret after you've hit the note on the 5th fret. Okay, you can hammer on 1 fret or a semitone. You can hammer on 2 frets, a whole tone, or you can hammer on 3 frets, that's 1.5 tones. Its companion technique or sister technique is the pull-off. That's kind of the opposite. And that's, there are 2 ways of doing that. You can hit this D note. Okay, I'm hitting the fretted note, and then I'm removing this finger, but I'm doing it in a slightly sideways or downwards motion, so that I'm actually almost plucking the string as I take my finger off. I'm doing that. So okay, if you combine that with a hammer-on, you don't need to pick the 2nd note. Your hammer-on has done that for you. So it's pick, hammer-on, pull off. If you repeat that, you get what's called a trill. And you can do that on 2 frets or 1 fret or 3 frets. Okay, so that's a very handy technique. You can do these off open strings. We'll take the 3rd string, the G string, so I'm going to do a trill on the 2nd fret, that'll be in A. On the lower A string, the 5th string, we could take the 3rd fret. There's all kinds of things you can do with this, but that's a nice little flourish or a decoration you can build into your solo. And lastly, we're going to look at a variation on the bend. We have the simple bent notes, but what you can do is add a 2nd note and let your bent note ring. So you end up with a kind of harmony. I'm going to bend this D on the 7th fret of the 3rd string. I'm going to bend it up a whole tone, 2 frets to E, and then I'm going to fret the 8th fret on the 2nd string. That's a G. So I'm going to end up with this. Okay, and you can bend up and down. There's a danger of that beginning to sound a little bit country, but if you stick to the blues scale, so we're in this, in A, we're in. So what I'm actually playing is kind of A7th thing, but that's something Hendrix used a lot. there's another one here. If you fret on the 8th note on the 2nd string, that's a G. If we bend that up a whole tone to A, and then our little finger on the also on the 8th fret on the 1st string, we've got a C there, so we can again, you might think at first that sounds a bit country, nothing wrong with that, but it's actually, when you get it in a blues context, it's a very evocative kind of phrase. Clapton, Paul Kossoff, those kind of players. Okay, so that was an express train ride through the basic techniques of solo playing. Next, we're going to look at the notes we're going to play. I'm going to look at the E blues scale and the A blues scale. I'm keeping it very simple to begin with. And then we'll look at a solo in practice with a backing track. So stay tuned.